People often look at me weirdly when I say that I don't like any form of sport, but they never seem to offer me anything quantifiable about what makes me the weird person and them the normal one. I mean, whenever I either like or dislike a piece of media, I usually mind, try and at least offer something quantifiable about why I do or don't like it. I try and break it down and offer reasons why it does or doesn't work according to me, and if I can, try and offer my way of making it better. But I can't really do that with sports. Maybe I could with partaking in it, but when it comes to watching it, the way I see it, it's just a bunch of tiny differently coloured blobs on a screen kicking a smaller blob onto an arbitrary side that a goal's been placed on, and whichever set of blobs does that the most amount of times is the winner apparently. Seriously, how the fuck do people write content about this in newspapers every day of the week? The football game that was played last night was a good football game. The reason that the football game was good was because it had a ball in it, and guess what? The ball was round. I know, right? It wasn't a square or even a rectangle. That was how much thought the organisers had put into it. And the manager used a certain player that I like in the game. And what makes this player good is that when he kicks the ball at the net, he uses his feet. Not like any of the other players on the team, no, he kicks the ball at the net and the ball goes in. Just like at every other fucking football game that's ever been played ever. And when the ball went into the net, the way in which the ball went into the net was just generally better and more gooderer. This football game was great drama, just like Hamlet or Wuthering Heights. I give it 10 out of 10. In response to I'm not really into sport, I always get this response by said sports fan who's brought it up. Really? Not any sport? But you've got to have a passion. Because apparently passion is exclusively something that comes out of a love of moving blobs on a screen. You know, you can't be passionate about, say, film or literature or music. No, moving blobs on a screen and national rivalries is the only thing that that word can be applied to, and therefore apparently I'm a boring shit who doesn't care about anything. Like, that word doesn't make your pastime special, you know? It could just as easily be applied to anything. I don't know, maybe my brain's just wired differently to everyone else's, but I swear that people just have an opinion and just use adjectives to justify them without actually realising that when said words are put together in a sentence, it doesn't actually mean anything to someone like me who isn't already ingratiated into that world. Oh, but come on, Stuart, the goals are amazing. But I see football scores in the papers all the time, and more often than not, only like 3 goals get scored the entire 90 minutes a game. These things are 90 minutes long. That is a hell of a lot of time wasted when the only good bit happens on average once every 30 minutes. And sometimes no one scores any goals, even in penalties. And do the punters get refunds if the final score's 0-0? I'd feel really ripped off if I went to a football game and the only good bit of it didn't even fucking happen. And besides, all sports have goals. All teams score points in some way. That's just how games work. Why is that a point in football's favour specifically? You could be watching anything here. All sports are basically exactly the same. Like basketball. What's so different between football and basketball? Well, instead of using your feet to put a ball in a goal on the ground, you're using your hands to put a ball in a net in the air. Basketball's essentially football but upside down. It's the same fucking game. And rugby's essentially football but you're allowed to hit people. American football's basically rugby, and hockey's basically football except it's played on ice and with sticks. And hockey is essentially baseball except the pitch is a different shape and people throw the ball instead. And baseball is essentially cricket but with different shaped bats and goals. And running is essentially both baseball and cricket except with no bats or point. And swimming's just running but in some water. Oh, and those are the ones that seem like they might be more interesting aren't. Polo's essentially golf crossed with bowls and played on a horse for some reason. Golf is basically a slow version of hockey except there are multiple goals that are tiny holes in the ground instead of a net. Motor racing? Well, that's basically just running but in a car, which is cheating, isn't it? Anyway, so I think we've conclusively proven that all sport is essentially exactly the same. Next time on Stubagful, I'm going to explain why rocket science and brain surgery are basically the same as delivering newspapers or working a supermarket checkout if you think about it really. Stop boasting, you pretentious twats.